Here we are at the Harris Center.
In my backyard.
Yes.
Today we're in Hancock, and we are going to be talking about salamanders and amphibians today on the show. I'm really excited because it's one of the most amazing kind of critters out there that we can actually experience ourselves.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking to Brett Thielen, who will be here. She's here right now, and Jody has to be behind the camera again this time. So Jody will be darting back behind the camera.
Yep. And I'm really looking forward to it too. I've heard so much about these salamander crossings.
Right.
And I always see it in the newspaper, and they let people know how they can be volunteers and things like that. Mm-hmm. I just don't know that much about it.
No,
I hear about it
a lot today.
Yeah. So we're going to turn things around a little bit, and you'll see Brett here in just a moment. See you in my backyard.
So I am back in my backyard. Now we've switched Jody, who's behind the camera, and we've got Brett Thielen here in front of the camera to talk about salamanders today. And all sorts of amphibians, right?
Yeah,
Not just
salamanders and frogs.
And frogs.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your job. You work for Avio, is that the right way to pronounce it?
I direct Avio, which stands for Ashwillet Valley Environmental Observatory, which is a lot of words, but what it means is citizen science. So we coordinate projects to get volunteers out collecting data about wildlife and the environment that has...
Not just salamanders and
Not
frogs.
just salamanders. The salamanders are our most well-known and most beloved project, but we do other projects as well.
Okay.
And so we are the citizen science arm of the Harris Center for Conservation Education.
Gotcha. So you are under the umbrella of the Harris Center.
Right.
And then Avio. So if we were interested in finding out more about Avio, we'd go to the Harris Center website.
You could go to the Harris Center website, which is harriscenter.org, and Avio also has its own website, which is focused on citizen science programs as well as other Harris Center events that happen in Keene.
Oh, great.
So that's just aveo.org.
Wonderful. Yeah, I knew it was somehow related to the Harris Center. I just never knew quite exactly how.
We're a program of the Harris Center, but we're very focused in the greater Keene area.
Okay.
So
and so I've read for years a ton about these salamander crossings and about the possibility of going out to see these salamanders cross the road. So tell us a little bit about the biology of why the salamanders cross the road at a certain time of year. What are they doing? What's the whole the biology behind it? What are they up to?
So it's this really incredible natural phenomenon that happens in our region, and it's kind of a myth. It's called Big Night. You might hear the word Big Night, and the myth goes that on the first warm, rainy nights of spring, after the snow has melted in the years that we have a snowpack, these salamanders and frogs kind of clamber up from their underground burrows all at the same time, and they make their way to vernal pools to breed. And the myth of Big Night is that this all happens on one big night, that all the spotted salamanders and all the wood frogs and all the Jefferson salamanders all move at the same time to the vernal pools to breed. In reality, most years it happens in a series of medium-sized nights or small nights where they're moving en masse, but maybe not every salamander moving at the same time.
Okay, now tell me a little bit of background here about where were they all winter?
Yep, they spend the winter underground burrows. Wood frogs, unbelievably, can actually freeze solid. Their heart rate stops, they stop breathing, and they basically are in this state of cryogenic freezing, and that's how they overwinter. And once the weather warms, they thaw out and kind of come back to life.
Okay, so I know that insects do this with the help of something that lowers their it's like an antifreeze almost.
Right.
Is it a similar thing?
Yes.
With frogs? Okay,
very similar.
And are they under the mud? Is that where they're generally?
They're in the forest floor, so they're under the leaf litter, in the dirt, in burrows. Salamanders cannot freeze; they can't survive freezing. So spotted salamanders and other salamanders burrow deeper below the freeze line. Frogs are a little closer to the surface because they can withstand these colder temperatures.
It's amazing to me. I just have to say, we're filming this right now. It's February. And I think we've been out there hiking. It's not a terribly snowy year this year. Hiking and ice skating, and the whole time we're doing this, all these critters are basically in hibernation mode of some sort, whether it's freezing like the wood frogs or just being down below, like you say, below the freeze line. They're all there. We sort of forget about them, but they're all there.
And spotted salamanders can live to be 20 or 30 years old, which is incredible. So when we have kids, or even high school kids or college kids holding these animals, they may be holding animals that are older than them, which I think is incredible.
Tiny little animals. It's amazing.
Yep.
So when they do come out, so you say the cues are, is it temperature and light?
It's temperature. They come out, they're nocturnal, so they're active at night. But the other cues are weather cues. So the temperature in the evening needs to stay up in the 40s or 50s to cue them, and it needs to be raining. And also, on the years that we have a snowpack, that needs to have melted for the most part, because if you think about rain filtering through a snowpack, by the time it gets to the ground, it's very cold. And even if your rain is 50 degrees, by the time it filters through a snowpack, it'd be down in the 30s again. Right. So we're really looking for clear ground, rainy nights, and temperatures in the 40s and 50s at night. So this typically in our area can happen anytime from late March to late April.
Okay, now why are they going to the vernal pools? Is that because they need the water to lay the eggs?
Yeah, so this suite of amphibians that we're talking about have adapted a life strategy, which is that they breed in places called vernal pools, which are temporary pools of water. These are depressions in the forest floor that fill with snowmelt and spring rain. And typically by the end of the year, many of these places will have completely dried up. And that's important because if you don't have water year-round, you don't have fish. And that's
so they don't
important
have predators.
because fish eat amphibian larvae and eggs. And so what these amphibians have adapted to, and also there's a suite of other species, including crustaceans. There are shrimp that live in vernal pools. There are a whole bunch of insects. In New Hampshire. Yes, they're absolutely incredible. And so they are breeding in this place where they know they don't have a lot of predators coming for their young, but in exchange, their young, for the amphibians, need to go through their life changes from an egg to a larvae that has gills that breathes in water to an adult stage with lungs to breathe in air before that pool dries up. And so if we have a very dry year or a very warm year, that can happen before the young frogs and salamanders have developed
their lungs.
So they're trading in this kind of reduced predator pressure for the pressure of having to metamorphose really quickly.
Okay.
And vernal pools are some of these species that we see in the migration are also moving to permanent wetlands, but vernal pools are really special because spotted salamanders, wood frogs, Jefferson salamanders, they use these, fairy shrimp, use these places and require them for the survival of their species. And in many cases, they're very easily overlooked or developed because they don't hold water all year long.
Right, so someone's not saying, like in Keene we might say, oh, we can't mess with Robin Hood Pond.
Right.
Or we can't mess with, or we can't develop this area because of this permanent pond, Goose Pond, Robin Hood, etc. But you're right, a lot of people wouldn't think about these seasonal things that come and go.
Right.
So, it's an interesting bit of education for everybody. So I know that a huge part of what you do at Avio is related to this huge sign we've got back here, the Salamander Crossing. So tell us what that is and how people can get involved.
Yep. So as we talked about, many of these salamanders and frogs will spend 95% of their lives underground. They're wintering underground, but the one time of year that they rise up to the surface and move across the landscape is to move to their vernal pools to breed. And they'll move anywhere from a few hundred feet to a few thousand feet from their forested, wooded home.
And do they do this all at once?
They do this in kind of, it can be all at once, it depends on the year, but they're spurred on by those weather cues, that warm nighttime rain. And so depending on the temperatures and the year, they may move on several nights, they may move on one night, they may move on 10 different nights, but it's all happening in the spring, typically in April. And the reason that we formed the Salamander Crossing Brigades is because in many places now, their migration routes are bisected by roads. A lot of these animals need to cross roads to get where they're going. And roadkill is becoming a bigger and bigger conservation concern. And so just some statistics that blew my mind when I first saw them. We don't think about roadkill as an issue, especially for amphibians, because they're small, so we don't see them unless we're trained to look for them. It's usually nighttime and raining when they're coming out, so visibility is pretty poor as it is. And then all the animals that do get killed are scavenged by morning, by crows and other scavengers. So we don't see it. It's not very visible, but it's becoming a real conservation concern, especially for amphibians and reptiles. And so one study that I saw in Canada, they looked at a 2-mile stretch of road, 2-lane road, 2 miles in 2 years, and they recorded over 32,000 dead amphibians on this road.
Holy smokes.
Yes.
So this is really important that we help basically help them safely get to where they need to go.
Right. And even in these there was one study that looked at a small paved rural road in upstate New York and looked at spotted salamanders attempting to cross and found that 50 to 100%, depending on the night, did not make it across. So these are animals that are living 20, 30 years, and this roadkill is taking breeding adults out of the population, which makes it harder for them to recover. So it's a really big deal. In some places, if the level of roadkill keeps up as it is, it's predicted that you could have local extinction of our local species in the span of 25 or 30 years. And these species, a lot of people say, well, the salamanders are cute, but who really cares? The bigger deal is that they're a really incredibly important part of our forest ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So they are intricate part of the food web. They eat a lot of invertebrates, a lot of bugs in the soil. They're eaten by snakes and birds and other predators.
So it's that whole idea of taking a piece of that really important
right.
ecosystem and food web out.
Right.
That we don't want to disrupt that.
And to think about how important they are, this is another study that blew my mind. One way that scientists look at how important species are in an ecosystem is by looking at what they call biomass. Mm-hmm. And in simple, what that means is if you take the weight or the mass of one individual of a species and multiply that by the number of individuals that exist in that species, you get a measure of biomass, a number. Mm-hmm. And so one study looked at salamanders in a forested landscape and found that the biomass of the salamanders there was greater than all the bird and small mammal species combined during bird breeding season when you have a lot of birds there. So what that says is that there's a lot of energy locked up in the bodies of these animals, and they help to transfer that energy.
And they help to balance the whole system.
Right. They're moving that between land-based terrestrial systems like the forest and aquatic systems like vernal pools and wetlands. They're helping move that energy through. There's been studies that show that all the burrows they use under the forest floor help trees and plants get access to oxygen and nutrients.
It's interesting you mention that because I was just talking to someone about all the critters that live under the soil and how important it is that they move through and burrow and have these different ways so that you can aerate the soil. A tree or a plant can't use a packed mass of soil. It needs to be loosened, needs to be aerated, it needs to have spaces for the roots and the water and the minerals to move through.
Right.
And so amphibians sounds like a huge piece of that.
They're a really big piece of our forest ecosystems, ensuring the health of our forested landscapes. And we don't see them, so we don't often think of them serving this role. Like insects, you don't see them, but they're there.
So then what you guys are doing basically in Avio is training folks to help the salamanders get to where they need to go.
Right. And so what we do is we train people. We've identified a few places on our local landscape. We've got 8 to 10 kind of formal sites in any given year that we know are hot spots for amphibian migration, that in a good year you've got a steady stream of salamanders and frogs moving across in those places. So for instance, North Lincoln Street in Keene, on one of our big nights a few years back, in the span of 4 hours, our volunteers counted almost 1,000 frogs moving across a tenth of a mile stretch of road. So we've identified some places. We also are hoping volunteers. We've heard kind of anecdotal reports of another 15 or 20 sites where this happens every year, because these are animals that are returning to the same place year after year. So we can predict, once we have identified a place where they're moving across roads, we can predict that they will be continuing to move across those roads in the future.
If folks who are watching know of a place, maybe near their home, that this happens continually, they could let you folks know by going to the website.
That's right.
And then let's say I wanted to volunteer to help these salamanders. How would I get in touch?
So we've got the best place is to go to avio.org. That's our website. And we have trainings that we host in late March of every season where we has a 2-hour evening training typically, or sometimes on Saturday mornings, where we teach you how to identify the species. We tell you where the locations are. We sign you up for an email kind of update where I let you know when a migration is imminent. We also have that information during salamander season. We have a salamander forecast on our website and our Facebook page so that you can get that information too. And then most importantly, what we train people to do is how to be safe on the roads at night. The biggest part of our training is how to be safe for you and safe for the salamanders, because these are roads. Some of them have relatively heavy traffic. We don't send anyone out on a really, really busy road because it's just not worth the safety concern. We want everyone to be safe, but we train you on how to be visible, on how to be safe. And one of the big misconceptions is that we actually stop cars. We don't do that. Our volunteers do not. We're not a typical crossing guard in that we don't stop cars to let the salamanders pass, but what we do train you to do is how to handle them gently and move them across the road before the cars can get to them. So these are relatively slow-moving animals, and if we can move them across before a really fast-moving car comes down the road, then that helps get them across.
To where they need to be.
Yeah, so our training is kind of how to identify these species, how to handle them safely, and then how to be safe yourself. And then we kind of include you in our list of salamander people who get an email and sometimes a phone call when we're heading out when we think a migration is coming.
And you can go out at night in your raincoat.
Yep, you're out at night in your raincoat. This is a rainy night, so you've got your reflective vest, your flashlight, maybe a headlamp. We've got data forms. The science part of this project is that we keep track by species and by whether they're alive or dead of how many animals we find at each site, how many cross. And so in the last 5 years, our volunteers have crossed over 11,000 animals.
Wow.
Which is really exciting. And some years the migration happens in the very middle of the night, and we don't send people out at 2 a.m. That's another question I get a lot is, I don't know if I want to go out at midnight.
Yeah.
For us, what we're really looking to do is to go out at a time when road traffic is
the
highest.
heaviest, right.
So what we're really looking at is dusk, which in April is 7 or 8 at night, until you feel like going home. But typically that's 10 or 11.
Right.
And then after that, the salamanders and frogs will migrate all night long, but road traffic is so much lower
that
after
you're not
those hours.
quite as concerned.
Right, that roadkill is less of an issue then. So people typically, on a typical good year with a big night, will get an email from me a few days ahead saying there's rain in the forecast, keep your eye out. And then when it looks really good, we'll say, okay, we're heading out. And you'll head out around 7 or 8. You've got your raincoat, you've got your reflective vest. There's other people coming to the site with you, unless you're scouting out some of your own sites, which we also really encourage. And then you're kind of walking down the road with your flashlight and moving animals across and keeping tallies and then sending them in along with cool photos and such to me, and then we share that with the community. And so we've got about 350 people on our Salamander Crossing Guard email list right now, and always looking for more.
Yeah, because you never know. So some night you might have somewhere to go when it's happening.
Right,
so you always want to have backups.
We don't require that anyone commit to coming out on any given night.
So the more people you have, the better off you are.
Right.
So let me just put it out there that if you are interested in helping with the amphibian crossings, go to the Avio website.
Yep.
www.avio.org, right? .avio.org. And you can sign up, get in touch with Brett, and get in touch with the organization. And then Jody, since you're standing there, why don't you give them our website information?
I will. It's in my backyard, ch8@gmail.com. And I have to tell you, Brett, I am on your list.
Yes.
And I get so many emails, not an overabundance, but awesome emails, because you really do tell everyone, be ready. This is going to happen tonight. Or there might be other programs that are coming up that you might want to know about for other things besides the amphibians. But I think that what you're doing is a great thing. Again, like you said before, a lot of people have no idea what all this amphibian stuff is all about. And I'm really glad that you've been our guest today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time, hopefully, maybe in the dark on a rainy night in my backyard.
All right.
Thank you.
See ya.